your life. You got this. Go chase it, live your life. Enlighten you. Let the light shine through. Enlighten you. Just see it through.
I'm Melissa Thrasher.
And I'm Lolita Cummings.
Welcome to Enlighten U, EMU's award-winning mental health podcast for students. We're excited to welcome today's guest, not just because she truly is a cool person, you'll see for yourself in a few minutes, but also because she checks a lot of boxes. And we think one of them may be one of yours too.
That's so true, Melissa. Today's guest is Kallista Marie, an EMU senior pursuing a bachelor's degree in general studies with concentrations in child literacy and African history and culture. She's a first-generation college student who came to Eastern in her 50s, and because of her age, she often wonders if she truly belongs here. That's because for her, like for so many of us, imposter syndrome makes its gnarly little way into her thoughts. We'll also be joined by a resident mental health expert, Dr. Aisha Mustafa, a licensed clinical therapist and an assistant professor in EMU's Department of Leadership and Counseling. Aisha and Kallista, welcome to Enlighten U.
So Kallista, welcome to the show. We're excited
Thank you.
to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Yes.
It's good to be here.
It's good, definitely. Good for all of us to be here, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So we're going to dive into your story.
Okay.
But my first question is, you started college as a traditional student, right?
Yes.
And then you came back to the university as a non-traditional student, as an older student. Can we talk about, like, what was your decision in coming back to EMU at age 53?
So when I came back, at 53. So it was, it was a twist and turn journey. So I came back because life had happened between 18 and 53, marriage, kids, divorce, working, life. And I always knew I yearned to graduate from a four-year university. Didn't know if I felt I was smart enough to do it, if we're going to be transparent and honest. So there was a lot of times that I would just stop myself because of my mental talk, like I was talking about. It's a whole world going on up here. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So when I was 53, I had graduated from Washtenaw because I had went back in my 40s. And at 53, I had started dealing, because I have a nonprofit, I started being in the world with other people. And I love listening to conversations that make me think. And that sort of lit that fire again. And that's what led me to come back and take a class in 2021.
Wow. So what are you studying at EMU?
This is long, so hang with me.
Okay.
So Eastern has a program called the Individualized Study Plan. Right. And so I am going to have a bachelor's in general studies with a concentration in African American history and culture, child literacy, and business foundations. So I get to study all the things that I do with Our Community Reads.
Wow.
And I get to get a degree while studying it.
I love that. And we're going to get into community reads in just a second, right?
Okay.
But I'm going to turn it over to my host.
Now, you guys are friends.
Yeah.
Tell me how you are friends.
Yeah, I feel like we probably met at like a community event and you were tabling for Ypsi District Library. And then I remember it was fall 2024. I had like a 6-month-old baby. I was like, let's go. No. Let's get, I need to get out of the house. And you had invited Dominique Theophilus to do trauma-informed yoga. And so it's not just a yoga class, it's thinking about like what is stored in our body and like the stress that comes up because we hold it in our body. And so started to talk to you, started to talk to Dominique, and then there was someone named Michelle Rodriguez who was there, who I knew in the past, and thinking about just partnerships. And so they do something called Black Girl Wellbeing. And then we both got invited to the advisory board, and then just keep seeing each other. And then I go to the library, and then
Black Man Reads.
Yeah, like Black Man Reads that's in the library. So all these events and like all this magic that happened because I had a baby. So like I always say, people like, how do you get involved? Like I had a baby. And so that helped. And then invited her last year to be at the Women of Color Symposium, to be on the panel, and just be like, Kallista has to come back.
Kallista has to come back.
Yes.
Well, thank you. I'm so grateful for all of the interactions that you two very, very active people in the community had that brought you to us. So welcome. And thank you so much for allowing us to find out more about Kallista. And we're going to dig a whole lot deeper than that while you're here. So thank you so much and welcome to the show. Now, your story is the story of so many other older women and men who may or may not have started school in their 20s or teens and decide to come back. I have friends who have done it, but it takes so much courage to do that because, like you said, in the middle, life was lifing. You had a lot of other things going on. You were very busy. You're still very busy. What gave you the courage to do that? And I ask you that because there are so many others who still have not taken that plunge. What gave you the courage to do it?
You know, I heard an interview with Oprah, right? And she was talking to Misty Copeland and another young lady, I can't remember her name. And she talked about how she's entered many rooms where she was the only woman, maybe the only woman of color, right? And she said, but I never felt some kind of way because, like Maya Angelou has said, I enter as one, but I stand as 10,000, right? And to that, my aunt told me, she was like, you come from a family of educators. You come from a family of learners. Even though my great-grandmother had to drop out of school early because of life, Jim Crow and all of that, her mother dying. My mother had me at 17, so she didn't finish school. I think I felt like I needed to carry on that legacy for the opportunities they didn't get. And also, if I'm going to promote education to our children, I think God gave me a burning that what would that look like for them to see you doing it? I can talk all day. And sometimes I do. But if I can sit down and say, man, I'm trying to focus because I have this to read and I'm struggling, I get it. Now, when I'm talking to you, I'm saying it because I understand. And I've also worked enough jobs where I didn't make very much money. And now I see how not only will this opportunity open up opportunities for me, but it will broaden my mind. And that is what's so important to me. And I appreciate it differently. And so I think I don't always feel like I have courage. I just do it scared.
Mm-hmm. And so many of us do. I love that you say that you appreciate it. You appreciate it more now than you did before.
1,000%.
Yeah. It's more valuable to you because you can see the impact of it. Right?
Absolutely. And I interact with the information differently. When she mentioned that she invited me to the Women of Color Symposium, one of the women that was there, Professor Logwood, is now my professor.
Diane
Logwood.
Diane Logwood. Yeah.
Right.
Diane
And
Logwood,
I'm in my second semester having her as a professor. And so she made that connection for me. So that's how the dots get connected. And Chelsea, who made my shake this morning at Ypsilanti Nutrition, right? We were talking and she was like, you walk in rooms that otherwise would not have been open to you. You had a baby, I went back to school. So it just opens up worlds and opportunities that I'm thinking probably would not have happened had I not just been like, I'm gonna do it scared. And I'm scared often, but I still do it.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that in a little bit.
Okay.
Because that scared is part of that imposter syndrome, I'm sure,
Absolutely.
right? We're going to talk about that in a little bit. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. You know, your story is so interesting to me because my aunt, she was the matriarch. I say was because she's no longer with us. So she was the matriarch of our family. She went to college later on in life to get her master's at age 50. And she always taught us that school will always be there for you, no matter what age you are. So I commend you because, of course, you know, I know that you're in some uncomfortable situations, but you're doing your thing, you know, and that's commendable. So I just wanted to, you know, give you a nice little applause. And my next question, because you have all of these life experiences and you've been a non-traditional student and, you know, now you're flourishing, you know, and doing your thing, how does your life experiences show up in the classroom?
It allows me to listen in a deeper way. You know, you're going to school with a lot of young people.
very young. Do you sometimes say, "Oh gosh, I've been there, done
Yes, absolutely. You know, but what I'm impressed by is I think in the culture that we live in, so often it's easy to lose hope. And being 58 and sitting next to people that are in their 20s and hearing how excited they are and how many ideas they have, I learn so much. And I'm in a place where I want to learn from them. I don't look at them, I don't know if I ever did, but I don't look at them like, you a baby. What can you teach me? They can teach us so much. And I'm taking notes, like physically taking notes, and I just smile because it gives me hope. When you're interacting with people of different ages, it just broadens your experience. And then how they respect you, it is kind of hard the way they respect me, like, okay, ma'am. And I feel like, who are you talking to?
I know, right? You know? Yes.
But I think the biggest thing for me is being here, having lived, having raised two young men. I have a 24 and a 28-year-old, seeing them go through things. And so when I hear these conversations and going to these spaces, I listen deeper. And it helps me interact with my sons differently. It helps me interact with the young people that I serve differently. It's just so beneficial. And it's just, I'm just so grateful. I'm a deeper listener, and I just want to learn from them. And I'm a lot quieter, which is shocking. And I'm always like, I don't want to miss anything. I
love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Aisha,
Yeah.
Kallista has talked a lot about what it took to get her here, and now what she's experiencing while she's here. Is that typical?
Yeah, often typical. I mean, I love Kallista's just a wonderful soul of the experiences she talks about and like hearing the power of returning to school. And I love the fact, like this tagline of like, I do it scared, because often with folks returning to school in older age, it's like they have more financial commitments, maybe raising kids. And so sometimes it's like, well, how am I going to study when I have all these things? And sometimes actually that can help, because you have a 3-hour block, you got to get it done. Because kiddo's going to wake up, you got to do X, Y, Z, where sometimes traditional students still have commitments, but it could be like, I can study all day on Saturday. And so I think this focus of what brings you here and what you want to do afterwards can be a really beneficial thing. Also with folks who after coming later in age, they may have transferred. And so that becomes a strength, I think, of like, you have to plan what classes you're going to take and how that transfers in a program, and thinking out like, how is this going to benefit? So Kallista talked about like, I'm working with young folks and they get to see her doing this, and they, the business, I think concentration of like, I own a nonprofit. I started a nonprofit. Like, what is this going to do for me? And now being able to talk about their youth, because I cannot wait till you graduate, because you're going to be trying to find all those tickets and all the students supporting you. I mean, it will be a community event.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I'm so excited about that.
Yeah.
I didn't know that I was going to need tickets. That's a whole nother conversation.
Yes.
Because I planned for all my kids to be there.
That's a hot item.
Me and Eastern going to have to talk.
Yeah. You might want to start that conversation now. That's a hot ticket.
Very much so.
Yeah.
What is it? How are you perceived in the classroom by your professors and by your peers? You have a lot of life experience. How does that show up for you? And how do you share that in the classroom? And I'm thinking about as a professor with discussions, because when I have non-traditional older students, I mean, we hang on every word, right? And I often find that the younger students will look up to you, maybe in some kind of leadership role. Do you find that yet? Or are you just still sitting back listening?
I do a lot of listening. What I will say is most of my classes so far, because I came back to Eastern this time in the summer of last year, and most of my classes, because I was just sort of putting my toe in the water, were online. So I've not really done many in person. This year I'm doing a mentorship in urban spaces. And so we meet online and then we go to the middle school. So when we're at the middle school, we're engaging right up my alley. But when we're engaging with the students, we're doing that. However, there have been a few times that I've had a couple of them be like, man, you've done so much, and I want to be like you when I grow up. I'd be like, calm down. Don't say that. Like, I'm so old, okay? Right? I can still get on a roller coaster. Everybody relax. But I have had some professors really respond to how much they appreciate my input, and the work that I do and how that really expands on the things that we're learning about in class. And I think for me, the reason why it's a bit of a challenge to answer that question, I try not to hold on to anything that's said, because then again, I will get in my head. I'm really very much, I'm just going to do. That is how I move through my days. I'm just if I'm nudged to do it, like the Locke's book, right? If I'm nudged to do it, normally I just do it. And that is what has gotten me from point A to point K, right?
When you say that, can you dive a little bit deeper? So when you're nudged to do it, so if maybe your son says, Mom, I think it's okay. You're in one of your worlds, but push forward. So are you talking about that kind of nudge? No. Oh yeah, explain.
No. Okay. So I'm a very spiritual person, very, very deeply rooted in what I believe. And I remember years ago when I attended a church in Ypsilanti, Messiah's Temple, which is a church I grew up in. And I remember my sons being little, and I came in late because I'm not the most prompt person. That's a whole nother conversation. But I came in, we were sitting up, and I'm a journal writer. I love writing in my journal. And I just remember hearing this voice, and it said, divinely inspired dreams have no expiration date. And I remember, now when I say I heard it, like Aisha is like, she gonna be fine. I heard it that clearly. And if I don't write something down, it'll just keep going around my head like a train. And so it just kept playing, and you got these 2 toddlers, and I'm sitting there trying to tend to them. And it just kept saying, a divinely inspired dream has no expiration date. So I wrote it down. Years later, that is what I put on my graduation cap from WCC. Wow. And so God will give me nudgings. He will give me nudgings, and it's just like, you just need to do this. And I've learned what that feels like for me. And when I don't do it, I'm not at peace. When I do it, things get built.
Right.
And so that's what I mean by nudging. Things align.
Yes. Wow, that's
Well, I am glad he nudged you to be here with us. Glad you.
Yeah. Wow.
Give us some inspiration and some motivation for those students who are like you, who want to come back, but they haven't found the courage yet. Or they're saying, and I have some friends like this who want to come back, but they feel like they're too old, that it's going to take them too long to finish. It's not going to be worth the journey. What would you say to them?
I've been there.
Yeah.
I am a huge quote person. And I watch a lot of videos, probably too many. But I would look for inspiration. Like, I'm a visual person, so I would look up stories. I love listening to people because there are stories all over when you're ready. And that's the thing, it has to align. There's a book. I'm always going to come back to picture books, y'all. I love picture books. There's a book about a real woman. I think her name was Mary Walker. So they can even research her story. But there was a picture book. It's called The Oldest Student. Go to a library or go to the bookstore, Blackstone bookstore, The Oldest Student, and read that book. That woman could not read her entire life. She had children, got married, worked, and she learned to read when she was in her 90s.
Oh my goodness.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
She lived to be 100 and something. She learned to read. So everything was squiggly lines until she was in her, I believe, 90s. And once you start going down that rabbit hole, you will find there's so many people that have gone back to school and got their bachelors or their associates. Because remember, at the end of the day, the education is for you. I think a lot of times we promote it wrong. Even when we're talking to our young people, we promote it because money. You want to make money, you got to get an education. It is so much more. I get to go study abroad and study social justice in Ireland in May of this year.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And what that showed me is I grew up thinking that when you study abroad, it's a whole semester. So I thought it was too late for me, right? And I saw my email and this opportunity came across my email, and I was like, and I just followed the yellow brick road. I just went and saw what the email said. And it was like, you could go a week. Here, you can go a week. I was like, wait. Because of course, working and doing all that I do, I couldn't go somewhere for a semester. Do it scared. And be open to, I'm not even going to say look for, because sometimes that can make you feel anxious. Be open to stories to let you know when it is your time to open that door. It's never too late, but it's important to be in alignment with doing it, because you're taking on a big endeavor, all depending on what else you are juggling. My sons were adults when I decided to go back, which made a huge difference. They weren't young, so I didn't have that I had to tend with. I was caring for my mother, who transitioned in 2019. So I think being open to, I want inspiration to come to me and write about it. Like, make a vision board. I made a vision board. I just remembered this. I made a vision board about school, like years ago, like even before going back was really a thing. I made a vision board and I had a graduation cap. I had like the scroll like they give you. I just remember that. I literally have an 8x11 vision board of education going back to school.
Can I tell you, just make me smile?
I know.
You just make me smile.
just
That is
like,
so
should I
inspirational, right? Yeah. Yes.
Thank
you
you.
so much.
You're
Aisha,
welcome.
How else can we get them to come back?
I think,
Or start? Maybe that not even come
I
back.
think
Maybe
just,
start.
putting inquiry in of like, what does this look like? Because I know some folks are like, oh my God, the transfer credits, it's been so long. And I also know someone's returning mid-30s, and a lot of these credits don't come back. And like, what are the programs out there? A lot of times, getting your associates from Washoe Community College is very affordable, free. Returning students, different age things. Be like, don't count yourself out before because maybe you can take us just, one class at a time and chip away at that. And there's also some nice scholarships for returning students, different life events, and just knowing that there are people there out to help you. And I want to circle back because you talk about your mother here, and I know the story, and just I love hearing about Topaz. And it's just like, I think,
Don't make me cry. I'm trying to stay
even
focused.
with any age group of, I think with returning students, one of the beneficial things is they have a very clear why. And not that traditional students don't, but it often is like, well, that's what you do. And it's like, okay, well, I'm here and they're telling me I need a major and I don't know. And the piece you said about, it's like, well, what job and yada, yada. You got to look at the metrics and why are you studying this? And I think with non-traditional, it can be like, this is a very clear thing I'm doing. The why is bigger. But I don't know if you want to talk about your mother, because I just love when you bring her up. And
Okay.
she
You talk me
your
into
mommy,
it.
like, she's always with you. But anyways.
Always.
Yeah.
Literally. Always with me. So I'm an only child. Right. And so my mother spoiled me like she did until she was no longer here. She spoiled me. And my mother was an avid reader. Like, she read all the time. She was I don't want to say generation cursor, but she paved new pathways. Right. She was big on travel. She was not from Ypsilanti. She was from, I think, Denver, or I don't know, St. Louis maybe. But so she always made sure that she was the oldest of 8. She always made sure she took us other places. We went to Detroit. She wanted us to be around, in her words, our people, right? She took us to Bablo. She took us to Cedar Point. She took me and my twin aunts to Jamaica, when I was in elementary, because we got good grades, right? So one thing that I do to honor her, so I celebrate her life when she transitioned in April 2019. I made a promise to myself that I would spend the rest of my life living my life fully in order to celebrate her, because I know there was so many things that she didn't get a chance to do because her health failed her. So I began the Topaz Reading Circle, which is inviting community and trusted family members into our programming, and we read together. And I go into schools and we all read the same picture book. And that is the Topaz Reading Circle. So every time I say her name, it's a reminder of why I'm here and why I am who I am, because she was deep into Black history to the point that I used to be like, Mom, it is not that serious anymore. Like when I was younger, I didn't get it. She used to, frame Black art and sell it. And my mother was bigger than life. And I know when she transitioned, I got pieces of her that I didn't have when she was here. So I literally carry her with me everywhere I go. And it opens doors, and it gives me a wisdom that I didn't have before she transitioned. And I think that shows up in my life in many different ways too. I just want to go back to when you say people that want to go back to school. When I went to Washtenaw, because I graduated Washtenaw in 2017, I did take one class. I remember I started in 2014. I took a speech class, one, and then found that it reminded me that I could do it. So for anybody who's thinking about doing it, just take one.
Yeah.
That's good.
Just take one.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good, easy first step. Just one. If
Just
you don't
take
like
one.
it, you've tried
That's a
it.
good,
It's
yeah.
not for you.
It is.
But what if it is?
What if?
What if it is?
Yeah. What if it works out?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
And that's a good segue into our next segment, which is you're also a first generation student,
Mm-hmm.
which made it even harder.
I
I'm
just found
assuming.
that out. Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
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 I didn't know that.
You didn't.
I didn't know, because I didn't know what it meant.
Yeah, right.
A lot of stuff
Right.
I'm learning literally for the first, I told you, I just do.
Yeah.
So I didn't necessarily know. I literally found that out last year.
So your mother was able to give you a lot of different experiences, but she couldn't give you the benefit of that experience because she couldn't give you what she didn't have. So that made your journey harder, easier, or you just dove in anyway?
I think I just dove in. I have a lot of people that I grew up with that have, that went to college, and, I went to McKinney Union back in the day and went to parties. And so I've been around people who were college educated and saw many people I graduated high school on their journey and things like that. I don't know. It may have made it more challenging. I don't know if I thought about it. So I think also, whatever it is that you decide to do, it has a lot to do with how you think about it. And I know how important our thoughts play out and how we walk out our life choices. So I don't know if I stopped and thought about it. I was just like, I was too busy thinking about other things. Am I smart enough? Will I be able to do the research? I think that was my focus. It wasn't a matter of, I don't come from a family of graduated. No, I think it was just a matter of when I decided to do it, I did it. And when I got an A, because even when I got an A in the class, because I graduated Washtenaw with a 4.0.
Wow.
Oh,
Congratulations.
Right. Yeah,
So
thank you.
There was no stopping
were
you.
ready.
Yeah,
You
I
were
was
ready.
ready.
You were ready.
But even in that, I doubted. They just gave me them grades. I'm telling you, you can tell yourself a lot of crazy stuff. I even have a 3.9 now. After this is my third semester. Yeah. So your head game is everything. So that's why quotes, watching videos, being careful, the conversations that you take part of. If you're focused on anything, whether it's working out, whether it's going back to school, you have to watch what you digest, what you look at, what you listen to, because your head being in the game is everything. Everything.
We are so inspired by your story. I mean, you talked about all the advantages of, being an older adult, returning back to school. And I'm like, gosh, do I need to ask the next question? Because I don't know. I mean, do you have any challenges? But what kind of challenges do you face as an older student?
Energy. I know for sure. First of all, I was smaller when I was younger. So I think that might have impacted just, when you're walking to class, I was walking from my parked car to the Haley Library. I was like, gee, I can't breathe. I was like, is there anybody else who can't breathe? Is that just me? But I think just my energy level is my biggest thing. And I think the optimism that you have a lot of times as a young person, you just really think the world is yours.
Right.
Right? I do it because I'm inspired to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think young people, a lot of times, I'm not going to say all because they have so many different stories, but I think they're so fresh and they just feel like, I listen to them talk in different classes and they're so excited about the future.
Yeah.
Even the things that weigh us down because of our life experience, and we listen to the political, they're just like, we're just gonna, we're just gonna go push through, and we're gonna change this, and we're gonna work. Okay, you want to meet, and they're just moving.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I listen so much, because I'm just sort of absorbing that and let it remind me when I feel like I can't. I'll be like, I just want to tap into what they have.
Exactly. And that gives you hope.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about imposter syndrome, because we've had a show dedicated to imposter syndrome and all of us experience that, in one way or another. But I know that you've dealt with that, in your college career. So can you touch on that and how you overcome it?
Yeah. I don't know if I overcome it. I think I know that it's there. I watch a lot of videos. I'm a TED Talk baby. I watch a lot of TED Talks and I search for stuff like that. I don't know if I overcome it. I do it anyway. And I think I used to really be fixated on, I have to fix it. I have to find an answer. Sometimes you just have to do it. And then you look back and be like, I did that? Oh. And so I don't know if I fixed it. I think I keep going and I keep living. That's how I handle it.
Do you later think like that little voice in your head, you didn't pay attention to it at all, but do you later revisit that voice and say, you know what, I did it anyway?
I write it in my journal.
You write it in your journal.
I write it in my journal. And I'll write that down. Like being in therapy, it tells you to counteract the negative things. And what can you write that you know to be true? So write down when those thoughts come, write down that, just like Avni, the Enlighten U intern, when she was walking to get more water, I saw the back of her shirt. I told you I love quotes. And the back of her shirt says, your anxiety is lying to you, right? And I write things like that in my journal. So I would write that and be like, it's lying to you. Okay, so if it's lying to me, what is the truth? What is the truth that I know? And then I just get in these zones. I may not write in my journal for months, but when I write, it might be a quote, like from her shirt. It may be from a song. And I'll just write like 3 pages of things I know to be true. And then I'll close it and I'll go to bed and I let that be that. Did I fix everything in the world that I had to fix? Probably not. But my soul felt at rest in that moment, and that was enough for me.
Maybe one day you will bless us by publishing your journals, because I there's so much wisdom in there. I can already tell.
Exactly.
And imposter syndrome is one of those things, we talked about it in the intro, where 70% of us suffer from imposter syndrome. So none of us are alone with it. But I saw this quote the other day, and it said, imposter syndrome is not about incapability, it's about inexperience. It's just because we haven't done it. And I just blew my mind.
Yeah.
And you're doing it. You're just jumping in and doing it. Aisha, how can we also, what are other ways we can deal with
Yeah, so I love what you're talking about. So in the theory world, we call this cognitive restructuring. And so there's a list of things, the tricks our brain plays on us. So one is catastrophizing, of like, okay, I'm going to return to school. This class is expensive. Oh my God, I had this mortgage. And then what if I fail the class? And then I have this bill and I have student debt. And it's just like, or you just go to office hours and it's just Tuesday, So just Tuesday's this thing I talk about in Enlighten U, of like, you could just do these things. And so what if you switch the frame and write over here that actually that doesn't make sense. These are the things I know about myself. Other different cognitive distortions, which is like your thoughts just distorted, is, well, this is going to replay what happened 7 years ago when I went to school. But 7 years ago, you're a different person. Even 2 hours later, you're a different person. And so not assuming that you can forecast the future, that the same thing's going to happen and happen again. I think another thing folks struggle with is, well, this is going to take so long to graduate. I'm taking one class by one class. It's like the time is still going to pass. and you took one more class than you already did. And so just chipping away. And maybe you decide that you don't want to graduate, but you still enjoy the class. And, while in higher ed, it's helpful to graduate, and those are great for us, as an institution to show. It's also you're learning things and you're making connections. And I think that's what matters. And so I think just switch the frame, and your brain will always tell these things. And anxiety also is not a horrible thing. So anxiety where you can't function is a whole different conversation. But getting nervous before you give a speech, I gave a TED talk and I'm like, oh my God. And then I had a student the other day reach out, and it's like, I happened to find this and it really spoke to me because I talked about being a Black woman with my own mental health. And like, that's why, like, okay, that reminds me. And you keep going forward and forward.
There you
Right,
go. There it is.
exactly.
There it is.
Yeah. As the kids say, clock that T.
I was like, which finger is
You want to wrap it up with?
Well, I know you're like ingrained in the community. You do a lot of great community work. And so we don't want to end the show without talking about community reads. And then you have this fantastic book here.
Yeah.
So talk about what you do in the community.
So our community reads is my nonprofit. We just turned 5 in December. Thank you. Thank you. And so I'm really committed to creating safe spaces for children. For children, especially Black children, because I think far too often they're in situations where they're othered. And that does not always create opportunities for them to flourish, right? Because people don't get their culture, you get in trouble for just being who you are at home. And so it can be kind of confusing. I amplify literacy, reading together, family literacy. I want to normalize it. That is a big dream of mine. Whenever we have something in IPSY, if people ask my opinion, can we have literacy on the center stage, whether it's Juneteenth or, we had a retreat. I belong to the Peace Hub Coalition. We had a retreat. Can we have picture books out? Because the inner child of all the adults, we also need to read picture books because it's joyful and we don't have enough joy. So I did bring these books here. When we were talking about how do I get through, I thought about this book right here, and it's called Before the Ships.
That's a beautiful cover.
It is very beautiful.
Can you turn it toward the camera?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. And I thought about this book, and it really talks about all the gifts and strengths that Black people had before we were enslaved. I'm glad they stopped saying before we were enslaved. We were enslaved. We were so much before that happened, right? And this book speaks to that. And sometimes I will, on any given night, have 3 or 4 picture books on my bed that I will just read one before I go to sleep, because that's the last thing I want in my head.
Wow,
right.
nice.
And so I do that. I'm big on collaboration. I believe in coming together to read anything joyful, books and brews, which is something we do. We meet at, Aisha has been there. It's a fundraiser for Black Men Read, and our community reads, and we have it at different breweries, and we have picture books, and people come to the mic and read it open mic style. I have a silent book club, and we come together a few times a year. I used to do it every month, but school is changing that. But we meet at different spaces, and you can bring whatever book you want to read. It's for adults, and we read. And now I've introduced, you can bring puzzles, and we can do puzzles together quietly. I do buses and books, which is something I do for teens in the summertime with Educate Youth.
And your day job as well.
Right. I work for the Ypsilanti District Library. And so I do baby story time, and I love my parents at baby story time, and we get to listen to Motown music, during our playtime. And yeah, I think literacy is really, people ask me, do you teach literacy? I don't teach it. I don't do phonics. I just think it's such a good connector. Yeah. I think when you are talking to somebody about a book or music, it has a way of bypassing a lot of the stuff that separates us. And it's a way of making us feel whole and safe and seen in ways that other things miss.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Thank you. And thank you.
I'm blown away.
Right, so am I.
You are
so am
such
I.
a shining light.
Yeah. Yeah. I've always
have her back.
I know. You can check out Books
You
and
really are.
Brews. I mean, it's just adults,
a
and
lot
it's
of
just
fun.
one
It's a lot
time. I
of
remember
fun.
this person was amazing, and I'm like, "Is this what do you call the people? Like when you play pool and they're like actually,
Shark?
yeah, pool shark."
shark?
But I'm like, "You're really good at this."
Like a
and
ringer?
yes, this person was like a librarian, and I was
Yeah.
like, "Oh," because I was
Yeah.
like, I mean, it's dramatic, and
Animated
it's,
and
it's
all that.
fun, and like I think it just brings joy, and the people getting to look through the books and be like, "This is the story I want to read."
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's just amazing. And the fact that children's books, the tone of them is just beautiful. And then I'm like, I need this in my spirit. And I love that your work expands across the life cycle. And then with our community reads, you're taking youth, like fifth graders, to see historically Black colleges. And then you're talking about being in college yourself. And like, it's just,
And
it's
can
a
I share
life.
one thing about that? So the reason why I take, and I tell my son this all the time, because I want him to know that it's true. When I'm no longer here and he reflects on who his mother was and our interesting relationship, I want him to know this is truth. My oldest son, Jordan, who, you have that child where you just bump heads, and that is Jordan and I. But we have had many disagreements, and a lot of what people see in our community reads were born out of those disagreements, of what he reminded me he should have experienced as a child. But we know as a parent, you're learning as you go, right? And he's like, they always told us to go to college. They never told us how to get there. That was one of his arguments. And I remember in the midst of the argument, I was like, I can do something about that now. So that's how we started taking kids to college visits in elementary. That's how we ended up having the program at the library we had in January. How do we get from here to there with educators on the panel? For parents to come and talk about how do we get our fourth grader to be ready for college. And we're going to do another one where we're talking about scholarships and things like that. So I want Jordan Walker to know that even though we've had some pretty intense conversations, his mother listens. And I use that to fuel our community reads.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Jordan. Your mommy loves you.
Absolutely.
Mommy loves you. Thank you so much for bringing your experiences, your joy, and your beauty to our table.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much for joining us today.
You're welcome. Thank you, ladies.
Thanks. That was a really good show and a good guest. She did check off so many boxes, but then she also has her nonprofit.
Yes. And I was so intrigued to learn about community reads. I know a few people that are in the program, and they do such great work in the community educating young people. So it's a great initiative.
It is.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Enlighten U. Kallista sharing her story today allowed us to cover several issues that affect the mental health of college students. If you're affected by one of these, I hope you listened carefully and found messages that'll help you.
That is so right, Melissa. I know the show really helped me, as many of our shows do. I wasn't a non-traditional or first-generation student, but I do still suffer from imposter syndrome from time to time. According to research studies, it's quite common. It affects approximately 70% of the population. Just remember that, because you are not alone. And Aisha just gave us ways to manage those negative thoughts. Well, that's it for this one. As always, we thank you so much for watching and listening to Enlighten U. And please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share it with others. Until next time, take care of yourself and take care of one another. Y'all be good.